Hey guys, welcome back. As somebody that has had mid-tower ATX cases for years and years, sometimes more than one at a time going, why all of a sudden do I have this little mini ITX case holding all my vast PC treasures next to me? Well, let's go ahead and take a look at that today. First things first, I am a little bit of a minimalist. I am one of those people that generally believes less is more, and the less clutter I have around me, the more my mind can engage and think and get things done in a timely fashion. The other thing that finally drove me to trying a mini ITX build is I've been watching Ali from over at Optimum Tech for years, and he does some really cool things, and he always makes it look like every mini ITX case has more than enough room to meet his water loop needs. Guys, if you're new around here and you enjoy hearing about, well, mini ITX builds, but also PC gaming and tech, consider subscribing. If you're just passing through, a thumbs up is always appreciated, as it really helps me out with the YouTube algorithm. As you would expect for the brains of the operation, I'm reusing my Ryzen 5950X CPU, as it is one of the most powerful consumer-grade CPUs currently on the market. And I'll show you how I'm going to tame the temps coming from this kind of spicy CPU here in a few minutes. For our GPU, I'm going to be, of course, reusing my RTX 3090. Nothing wrong with using this one again, as it is great for gaming and also is a champ for video editing. I decided to go with an EK all-in-one to go ahead and cool the CPU on this particular build. However, once upon a time, I'm fairly confident EK offered a 280mm basic, as they call it, as I prefer to think of it, Batman Black or Stealth radiator with no RGB anywhere on the build. However, Stealth Black must not have been a big seller in the 280mm radiator version of the AIO for EK, so now you have to buy the RGB version of the kit. There's no way around it. You can't order a black one from Europe or from Amazon. They don't seem to exist anymore in that particular form. However, me being me, I am not prepared to use an RGB fan in one of my builds. As any of you guys who have watched some of my videos in the past know, I am always a Noctua fan guy through and through. As most of you guys would also suspect, I went with basic black G-Skills RAM on this particular build. But I did treat myself. Everything seems to take more and more RAM these days, so I went ahead and got 2 sticks of 16 gigs each, as you only have 2 DIMM slots with a mini ITX board. However, I did go the extra step, and I made sure I had dual rank memory that was also B-die. Anybody that's done a mini ITX build knows you don't have tons of options to look at for the motherboard. It's not anything like an ATX build where you have tons and tons of options to pick from. Like lots of other people do, I stuck with something familiar and stayed with MSI, if for no other reason than I was already very intimate with the BIOS that they run on their motherboards. The other things that were a win for me with the MSI board is they have updated the clear CMOS button, and they had more than enough I/O for my needs on the back of the board. As far as storage goes, I'm reusing a couple of 1TB M.2 drives that I had in my previous build. To make all this go, we are using a Corsair SF750 Platinum power supply. I will certainly say the braided cables were a lifesaver when it came to navigating the small amount of space you had inside of this case. I'm sure many of you guys have said it or had it said to you, whenever you're handling a CPU that has pins on the back of it, be extremely careful. They are very easy to bend. For the first time in my PC building, dabbling, or fixing career, I ended up with a bent pin on the back of my 5950X. So what does the chaos look like from a day and a half of trying to troubleshoot a PC when you haven't realized you bent a pin on the CPU? Well, you end up with a frickin' mess is what happens during the process. It's absolutely one of those things that can happen to anybody along the way, and it happened to me this time, although I'm very careful when I handle any CPU, especially something that still has pins on the back of it. Although I am grateful that Ryzen is going to go away from having pins with the next generation of Ryzen chips. If you take away kind of the actual problem I had with the CPU and the bent pin, the only issues around installation were that of the GPU. So the two things here is down the bottom left of the motherboard are the front controls for the audio and the power. And then, of course, you have all the cables coming out of the PSU and what to do with them. So in the end, I routed the front controls down past the RAM and over the top of the GPU. There really weren't a lot of choices on that, as well as the front USB is kind of buried down there behind the nest of cables. And then coming out of the PSU, you really had to make some hard 90s, and I was thankful that I had the braided cables. That was the only way I could get enough space to comfortably slide the GPU into the slot. Once I got everything else installed, I kind of had an empty pocket there for the cooler to go on right on top of the CPU. So it was no issue doing the installation there. I really can't say enough great things about the EK AIO. That has worked out great, and its performance has been terrific so far. My only complaint, obviously, is that I can't get the 280 mil in all black anymore. So how well does all this high-end horsepower work inside the Mini ITX case? Well, it works pretty darn good, and gaming has been exceptional along the way. Here in Apex Legends, with all high and maxed out settings, we average 208 frames in 1440p resolution. What if a tactical shooter is more your thing? Well, we can do that also here with Valorant. And once again, we have all maxed out and high settings in this game. Over several games of Valorant, we average 345 frames per second. Again, remember, we are at 1440p resolution. Maybe a little bit of Call of Duty Black Ops is more your kind of thing. Well, we can do that also. And here we have all the settings up on Ultra, everything maxed out. No ray tracing turned on, however, just to let you know about that. For Call of Duty Black Ops 1440p resolution, we averaged 156 FPS with all settings on Ultra. So generally speaking, I'm used to larger ATX cases and lots of Noctua fans and big air coolers, and managing temperatures for your CPU and your GPU is generally not a problem for lots of PCs that I've built for a long time. However, going over to Mini ITX, even with the great EK all-in-one, it was a little bit of a different story, and although temperatures weren't necessarily out of spec or in the danger zone, I wanted to do everything I could to control what my temperatures were going to be to give me the best performance overall on the PC and in the games I was going to play. So I elected to undervolt both the CPU and the GPU. The first thing I did to go ahead and undervolt the Ryzen CPU was go into the BIOS and go to PBO limits and disable that function. The next thing I did was go into the curve optimizer, and I was sure to set it at a negative curve, and I'm going negative 18 on my curve optimizer. Now, I did have to mess around with that a little bit to find what was the limit of where I could go to and keep things stable and still get the most bang for my buck with going with an all-core negative undervolt. As far as the GPU goes, I did take my core clock down about 290 megahertz before coming back and adding some voltage back to the process. Guys, let me know if there's enough interest out there about undervolting either your CPU or your GPU. I'd be happy to make a video about how you do that. At the end of the day, was it worth it? Well, quite frankly, I don't think I could have asked for anything more from the Cooler Master NR200 on my first Mini ITX build. I think it's really a terrific case. All the panels will come off, the accessibility was wonderful, and for somebody that was doing their first Mini ITX build, it had just the right amount of space that you had to think out and plan your cable management, but it wasn't so hard to build in that you had a lot of frustration and you stopped mid-build. Of course, me being me, I found the process exceptionally satisfying, and already I'm thinking about dabbling in a full water loop for either this PC, or maybe I should make another one that includes a full water-cooled system down the road. However, I can definitely see myself building another Mini ITX PC for gaming, or for editing, or for work, or for somebody else at some point in the future. As always, guys, your thoughts and comments are very welcome down below. And a massive thanks for watching the video. Until next time, good hunting, and GIF out.